In fiction, we have many weapon wielders that grab your attention, from characters that use staffs like Goku or Jade from Mortal Kombat, or badass gunslingers like Red Hood and Revy. Although many weapons are utilized all throughout fiction, there's one weapon that stands out and is pretty intriguing, as in the West we had gotten rid of them a long time ago, but in the East they were extremely prevalent, and through art and writing the significance of the weapon still lives on today. And yes, I think you can tell what weapon I'm talking about, and that is a sword slash a katana. So as you can tell by the title and thumbnail, in this video I intend on breaking down the beauty of swordsman slash swordsmanship to really show you guys why we love them so much and find out why they're extremely intriguing. So strap in, because I'm going to get real in depth with this video. But before I get into the video, if you guys enjoy content like this, you know what to do. Hit that like button and subscribe, as I do post content like this regularly, and to be honest, it's a win-win. You guys show me love and support, and I give you that to you in the form of videos, whether it's anime, comics, or just fiction in general. In due time I plan on covering it, so be there when I go there. But I feel like I've rambled on long enough, so I want to jump straight into the video and break down the beauty of swordsman slash swordsmanship. To begin the video, we're going to go over what type of swordsmanship we're going to be focusing on inside this video. And for each representation of the different types of swordsmanship I'm going to be focusing on, I'm going to be using 3 different characters. The characters that are in the thumbnail, so that'll be Musashi, Zoro, and Ichigo. Now before I delve into any of their characters, one thing I do want to point out is that they all started off at the exact same spot, and I think this is very integral to a lot of swordsmen. A lot of swordsmen pick up a sword and feel like they can brute force their way through things because that's how they see it, since, well, a sword is just your weapon. As you get to know, swords are just more than just weapons, and you actually have to bond with them or do something with them. Well, for Musashi's case, it's more about learning the art of it, but either way, it's about properly learning the sword and how to wield the sword in any sort of fashion. So when they all pick up the sword, all 3 of them just club it around, just wield it around like it's just some massive club, because that's what they think it is. And I love that from them. And one character I'm all going to compare them to is Kenshin, as Kenshin at the beginning of the story is kind of a well-known swordsman. Not kinda, he is a well-known swordsman, and he is something that is basically a finished product at the start. Although he does get better throughout the series, it's shown that he is basically a finished product at the start, and when you compare them to him, you can tell that they're complete novices until you get later on inside their stories. Now out of the 3 of them, the one that I would say is the closest to Kenshin in terms of swordsmanship overall would be Musashi, as Musashi does show us that he does learn the way of the blade and just learns how to beautifully wield it. Now, as we all know, Musashi wasn't always known as Musashi. He was known as Takezo before, and as Takezo, he was more of a brute force type of swordsman that would wield his blade sort of brutishly because he didn't know how to properly use it. Takezo was all about rage, and what he would do is he would use his sword to basically help his rage and just lash out and allow him to fight through brute force. Now yes, you'll be able to beat your enemies through using that method, but will it last longer up against people that are really skilled? No, it wouldn't. And so through a spiritual rebirth, Musashi Miyamoto is born, and this is where Takezo then decides to learn the art of swordsmanship and really learn how to wield his blade. And this is something that a lot of people do love, as when you're reading these stories, whether it be his story that is written inside of books or it be through Vagabond, the reason we all love it is because we like to see people grow and have these introspective takes that allow us to think differently and just think about things in a different light. Musashi basically lived 2 lives. One where he was angry all the time, and then one where he was calm and he would then learn how to use his powers properly. His powers being his strength, but either way, the way he wielded his blade was like he had powers. Musashi was somebody that was very skillful, and as we all know, his tale lives up to today. And we obviously have stories like Vagabond to obviously go off of it, because, well, he was just that great at swordsmanship, and that is how great you can be when you're able to just sit there, realize that whatever you're doing is wrong, and you really need to sit down and learn your craft. This is something that would inspire a lot of people, as especially people that do sports. They can look at this and be like, yes, raw talent can get you a long way, but at a certain point you're really going to need to learn your craft to get to that next step, and that is something that Musashi Miyamoto, in my opinion, really does body, and that is why we all love his story. Yes, he had many things that happened to him in his past, but what he was able to do is get up and grow from it, because that is what you need to do in life. If you want to get really good at something, what you need to do is you need to sit there, be real with yourself, and actually learn what you want to do. Musashi had many nights where he would struggle to learn swordsmanship, but either way, he sat there and said, no, I'm going to go through it, and I'm going to make sure that I become the best at it. The reason I say he's the closest to Kenshin is because unlike the other two, these two wield the blade like they know it back to front and will actually learn the art of it. Now, I'm not here to say that Zoro nor Ichigo will learn the art of the blade. No, that is not the case. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying the way they go about it is very different compared to Kenshin and Musashi, and I think that is why a lot more people will say that they do like Kenshin and Musashi as swordsmen themselves than Zoro and Ichigo. But when I get into Zoro and Ichigo and break down their different way of swordsmanship, now just like with everybody else, when Zoro picked up his blade, he only used it for just his pure strength and his raw talent. That is why you'd see him increase the amount of swords that he carries around, because he'd be like, okay, 1 sword, okay, 2 swords, 3 swords, yeah, I think that's about right. But that was until he met Kuina, who just showed him that pure skill can beat pure strength. Now, of course, she was stronger than him overall, but obviously she showed him that yes, pure skill can actually just be better than pure strength, and that is where I feel like Zoro then started to understand that he does need to actually put some skill into it, along with obviously his pure strength. Now, once Kuina died and obviously Zoro went on throughout the years, you can definitely tell that he uses his raw strength a lot more than technique. Mihawk points this out as he is like, you're fine a little bit too like rudishly, you're using just raw strength, where is your technique? I think that is what Mihawk says. He says something along those lines, and that is one thing that's always stood out to me. Zoro in the beginning was using a little bit of technique, but it was mainly his raw strength that was getting him through everything, until he met Mihawk, and then he realized that he's gonna have to add more finesse into his style if he really wants to really reach that next level. And so he worked on his technique. He then figured out Haki and Alabasta, and then went on to do many different things later on, and obviously asked Mihawk for help, and then that's where you've properly learned Haki. Now, one thing I do need to mention is that One Piece's swordsmanship is a little bit different, as if you have a blade, it is better for your blade to be higher ranked, and that means that your blade will definitely have special abilities, meaning that you then need to learn your blade. Now, it's not like Bleach where you definitely have to learn your blade. I think you can get far in One Piece without learning your blade and just being able to use your Haki and whatnot regularly, but you can definitely tell the ones that are at the top definitely know how to use their blades properly, are in tune with their blades. What separates Zoro's version of swordsmanship compared to Musashi and even Ichigo is the fact that there needs to be a perfect balance between absolute power and technique. Musashi can rely on pure technique and be fine. Yes, obviously he does need to have the strength to back it up, but his technique can get him extremely far, since, well, he was from our world. It was very, like, we don't have any sort of special powers, unlike in One Piece where you have swords that you can communicate with, but you also then need that technique to back you up. And I think that is what separates him from Ichigo and Musashi, as you do need that perfect balance, and this is where you then get to see Zoro then go into his bag, come up with these different moves, but also make sure that he's not lacking on the strength part, and I think that is what a lot of people love to see. And just like Musashi, Zoro is continuously training, as that is all he thinks about. All he thinks about is becoming the world's strongest swordsman and continuously just improving himself, so he doesn't ever have to make a mistake again, or just let his crewmates or just anybody around him get hurt. When we transition past breaking down their characters, this is something that I want to move into, as swordsmen have this sort of thing where they like to protect the ones they love, but then on top of that they do have other layers to them that I will break down in a second. But I feel like it's time for me to dive into Ichigo, so let me talk about him. And so just like the other two, Ichigo went around wielding his sword like it was a massive club, just taking down hollows here, there and everywhere, until he then ran into Renji and Byakuya, and then that is where they show him that he just needs a lot more than just pure talent. I feel like this happens to every swordsman, but it happens in these 3 stories, and you can definitely see that as a massive turning point for all 3. And so once he learns that is when Ichigo decides to learn his blade a little bit more, as in Bleach, learning your Zanpakuto toe definitely means a lot more than you just even learning just basic sword skills, as you learning your Zanpakuto toe can really take you to that next level. And so that is what he does. Now, it's not to say that he doesn't learn new sword skills. Of course he does. He obviously gradually grows, but his main goal is to learn his Zanpakuto toe, which he does. And so that is when he's then able to obviously achieve Bankai, and the story continues from there on in. As we get to learn, that's obviously not his true Bankai, but he then obviously learns his sword all throughout the series, getting better and better over time, and through talking to his sword and whatnot and getting to learn himself a lot more, that is where we see him grow. Ichigo is all about learning about himself all throughout the series, and it mainly comes from his Zanpakuto toe, showing us a different side of swordsmanship. Yes, you can learn your blade, but your blade can also teach you about yourself, and I do think that is something that Ichigo is mainly getting when he's talking to his Zanpakuto toe and everything, and that is when you get to see him grow as a character all throughout the story. And so this separates him from Zoro and Musashi, as he is somebody that has to be completely focused on his sword, which means his sword skill does kind of get put on the back burner. Even if it does get better throughout the story, to us as the audience, it isn't portrayed that way. Yes, he does get stronger, but we just view it in terms of strength and him just knowing himself more. And I don't believe that is a bad thing. Although you can say that, oh yeah, them just simplifying it down to that can be bad, in my opinion, it's just a new way of swordsmanship, so I'm not really bothered by it. I know a lot of people want him to go a little bit deeper with it, but with him learning his blade and just learning about himself through his blade, that does intrigue me a lot more than him not knowing about that and just going down the normal generic path and not do anything different that Musashi or Kenshin or just any other great swordsman has already done. Because as we all know, aside from just self-improvement, a lot of swordsmen fight to just protect their family and friends, and I think that is one of the more fun and just bare aspects of swordsmen that I think we all gravitate to. Along with them wanting to improve themselves, swordsmen just come across as very respectable people, as 99% of the time they're just fighting to protect their family and friends, and I do feel like Ichigo does symbolize this the most, as that is his main driving force all throughout Bleach. But don't get it twisted, Zoro and Musashi do the exact same thing, and along with Kenshin. It's just how they go about it in different ways that you do like it. Ichigo only fights, or primarily fights I should say, for his friends and to keep everybody safe. He's a natural protector. And yes, Musashi and Zoro are the exact same way, but you can tell this is the driving force behind Ichigo, as the other two would still be fighting. If Ichigo didn't have to protect anybody, he would be chilling. Yeah, he doesn't mind having his powers, but he'd be chilling 99% of the time, as the other two do it for self-improvement and to reach a certain goal. And it's not to say that Ichigo doesn't fight for self-improvement as well, but it's just not onto the exact same level as the other two, or even three if we're talking about Kenshin as well. Now, alongside their drive, something that I do believe that's even more important is their enemies. In my eyes, what really sets swordsmen apart is their growth, and what forces their growth are their enemies. And enemies are something that needs to be extremely good when focusing on the swordsman. Musashi's opponents have always grabbed me, and I do feel like Baiken, in my eyes at least, was my favorite. There was something with his conflict with Baiken that always pushed me to be like, I want to read the next chapter, as when they were fighting, I felt it. I don't know why it was Baiken especially, but it was the first time that I was properly moved, and that was where I was like, yeah, I can understand why people get the hype. For Zoro, it was definitely Mr. One. With Mr. One, you could definitely feel the stakes, and when he whipped out the breath of all things after being pushed to his very limit, you felt it. You was happy for Zoro. You felt his growth, and you knew that his fights later on down the line may not even live up to this, but you do know one fight that will, and that's Mihawk, and that is a fight that we are still waiting for till this day. And for Ichigo, it was definitely Kenpachi, as you did feel the weight of that fight, and you did know that even though it was a BS win on Ichigo's part, it was still a great win for him to have, and it was still something that was very entertaining for us to see. Seeing Ichigo, somebody that just wants to save people, go up against somebody that just loves the art of swordsmanship or just wants to fight, was something that was very interesting to see. And since nobody else throughout the story really is on that, we don't really feel it as much. But either way, you could say that there are fights that do match this pedigree, but in my opinion, Kenpachi versus Ichigo will forever be my favorite Ichigo fight. And as you can tell, it's mainly because their opponent is willing to let them grow or just wants to see what they can do. When a swordsman goes up against somebody that is willing to let them see what they can do and wants to see the other person grow or just go out for a slugfest, that is where we feel the most drawn in. Why? Because it's the most fun, and we do get to see different versions of these characters come out, and you really get to see them dig deep, and that is something that we'll forever love as fans. And that's just the beauty of swordsmanship and just swordsmen overall. These are people that will sit there and will go into their introspective bag when needed, when they know that they're down and they need to do something. And I feel like these type of stories do grip us because it does feel like the author will make them lose, as swordsmen are characters that are notorious for not winning every single fight. They don't mind taking a loss to then get a win or get 10 wins after that one loss. That's just how it is, and as somebody that enjoys martial arts, that is something that I love to see. Seeing them forced to grow as people is just something that we'll all love, because that is something that we see on a day-to-day basis with ourselves. If you're really somebody that wants to get better overall at life, you will sit there and be like, I need to get better, what can I do? You'll sit there, think, and then at the end you'll be like, okay, I'm going to improve on this, I'm going to stick at it until I'm the best at it. Even if you don't become the best, you at least want to become extremely good at it, so you're then comfortable with it. And that is something that swordsmen have given us, and that is something that we'll always love them for. And that is why I do believe, even though swordsmen have died out years ago, that is something that we'll still love, because we love to see people grow. And these are the people, at least in manga and even in certain comics, that bring this out, and we are able to see them grow throughout their stories, and we love their introspective ideals and just how they are as people and how they are extremely respectful. But with that being said, you guys are reaching the end of the video. Hope you guys did enjoy this video. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I've been putting this video for a long while until I actually sat down and recorded it. Well, I say this is one of my favorite recording sessions. Will you guys get mad at me and say that I've been putting this video off because I thought I didn't think I was gonna like the recording session, but I actually did? Hey, chill on me. No, as usual, I love you all. I shall see you guys in the next video. Thank you for the support. Thank you for 7k, 100k next. But yeah, I shall see you guys in the next video. I love you all. Thank you for the support. Goodbye.